I want to welcome you to the town of Eatonville and thank you for your participation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kirsten Anderson. I am the Deputy Legal Director for Economic Justice from the Southern Poverty Law Center. The Southern Poverty Law Center is a nonprofit organization that works across the Deep South to be a catalyst for racial justice. Our team, the economic justice team that's here today, is working on issues at the intersections of racial and economic justice across the Deep South, particularly in historical African American communities. What brings us to the town of Eatonville? About 6 months ago, we began working with Ms. N.Y. Nathiri and the Association to Preserve the Eatonville Community, P.E.C., when they asked for help to support their advocacy against the development of the Hungerford property for commercial and residential purposes. As many of you know, that land had long been held in trust by the Orange County Public Schools for the education of African American children. Now it was being sold for a development that would have priced out much of this community and in fact been a catalyst for displacement and gentrification. You will hear from our team tonight about the work we began under P.E.C.'s leadership and continue today in their efforts to ensure responsible economic development of land that constitutes nearly 14% of all of the land in the Eatonville community. First, you're going to hear from Ms. Linda Hasbury and the work that she led to ensure that this story is told so that whatever happens here, the people will be a witness. Next, you will hear from Anjana Joshi and the work that we did in the fall and the spring of this year to support P.E.C.'s efforts to oppose changes to Eatonville's comprehensive plan, and how instead we supported their efforts to advocate for land use policies that will benefit the community instead of harm it. Next, you will hear from Ms. Jamie Rush and how we sent a letter to the Orange County Public School District reminding them of their civil rights obligations under federal law to not take actions that discriminate on the basis of race in connection with this decision to sell the land. Melissa Williams will then tell the story of the facts that we uncovered during our investigation that formed the basis of a lawsuit that we filed in state court on behalf of P.E.C. That lawsuit is pending. I will conclude by just explaining briefly the legal claims and what we are seeking the court to decide, which basically is to ensure that the land is continued to be used for community benefit instead of private profit. Now you will hear from our team and why our work for economic and racial justice brought us here to the town that freedom built.
So good evening again, everyone. My name is Linda Hasbury, and I am truly delighted to be back here again in Eatonville. As Kirsten said, the Southern Poverty Law Center began its mission to be a catalyst for racial justice in the Deep South. That started over 50 years ago now. We work to dismantle systems of oppression and to be thought leaders with the community. And in doing so, being thought leaders with the Eatonville community. So today I'm going to explain to you the media strategy portion of what was used to just amplify the voices of the people of Eatonville to the country. So as we all know, Eatonville is a town that freedom built, and telling the story of Eatonville was of the utmost importance. I know I don't have to stand here before you tonight to tell you the history of the place that many of you have called home for generations, but what I did have to do was get that across to the nation, and in a lot of cases internationally as well. So we know that Eatonville is one of the first African American towns in the United States to be incorporated by freedmen after the Civil War. And through them and their vision, the town holds an indelible place in American history. Eatonville is also the community that gave to the world one of the preeminent writers of the Harlem Renaissance, Ms. Zora Neale Hurston. So centering the voices of Eatonville, I wanted it to be community-focused and heritage-driven. A former colleague actually started this and began some talking points, and then he got another opportunity that he wanted to go for, and so it came to me. And it has been one of the greatest gifts that SBLC has given me, because I've met wonderful people in the Eatonville community, and it does hold a special place in my heart now. So I wanted it to be focused on the community and driven by the heritage of the community, as we said, being one of the first incorporated in the United States. Zora Neale Hurston, really just an oasis for culture, basically, and the arts. So the communication strategy began with research. As I said, we wanted to just kind of look at a few things that could really drive the point home to others. We know that Eatonville is somewhere that is very tight-knit community, and that does mean a lot to other people, especially with the world today. You know, everything is so communication-driven in terms of like digital and things like that. So we really wanted to focus on the tight-knit community of Eatonville. So then we did some data points and created a strategy. And then the next phase of the plan was to actually execute that strategy. So media engagement, that basically was talking points, statements, pitching notes, media advisories and press releases, media counsel and coaching, media outreach, and interview coordination. I wanted to use a three-pronged strategy, which was pretty much to have our editorial piece, then we do the press releases, and then kind of go from there. But we wanted to engage local media first, and then go to the national media. So here is a picture on our website of one of the first editorial stories that was done, Preserving Black Heritage, Florida Activists Fight to Save Historic Site and Their Culture. And I want to thank NY and the P.E.C. and anyone else who, provided these wonderful pictures that we were able to use to really drive the point home about history, culture, and heritage to our SBLC reading audience. And then the second story that was done was Willing to Fight, Residents Rise Up Against Development That Could Erase Historic Florida Towns' Rich Black Heritage. And there you have Ms. Vera King. And all of these are on our website still. If you need the link or anything, you can see me after and I can provide you the link to where to go to read all of the stories on Eatonville. And so this particular story, by Wesh 2 is one of the first that was done in a sense. This was our engagement to the local media before going to national media. And I'm going to play that video for you.
Tomorrow marks a highly anticipated vote over historic piece of land in Orange County. The 100-acre property in Eatonville is up for sale. It's a treasured parcel in the old Black Township in the country at the corner of Kennedy and Blackwell Road.
Tomorrow, the town council is voting on a development proposal that some say will pave the way for a better future. Marty Jones and Marlon Martinez tell us many residents worry the development could erase their history.
Demolished during the pandemic. Now the school district is selling the land.
Land is money, land is wealth, land is economic justice.
I spoke with Julian Johnson. He started 1887 First, the group behind this petition opposing the sale. His worry?
Well, the same thing that happened to Hannibal Square, the same thing that happened in Ocoee, the same thing that happened all over the country. Black people lose their pride, their heritage, their culture, and who they are, and their homes.
This is a development proposal if the sale goes through. 350 residential units, office, retail, and open spaces, and an area for civics and arts. The development team, Hungerford Park LLC, met with residents about the plan as recently as last week.
You leave because we don't want you here.
And they were met with vocal opposition. N.Y. Nathiri was there, a prominent community leader with the Association to Preserve the Eatonville Community that runs the Zora Neale Hurston Museum.
This is a no-brainer. It will not be good for Eatonville.
Nathiri says the plan for this 100 acres will have a 100-year impact on the town.
What it would do is erase Eatonville.
If the sale goes through, Orange County Public Schools will make $10 million, and the town of Eatonville will make $4 million, plus an estimated $2.5 million annually over the next decade, according to the developers' projections.
I have never been against development.
I sat down with Eatonville Mayor Angie Gardner.
I just believe that whatever development it is, it doesn't matter. We just have to be in it.
Gardner says the town could use some growth with educational, cultural, historical, and entertainment sites. But she says an influx of housing worries residents.
I don't want a city within a city. I also hear quite often that we're going to end up being a marker on the side of a street in someone else's neighborhood.
Meanwhile, some say the development could benefit Eatonville.
If you don't have any development, you're going to die.
I spoke with Willie C. Barnes, the pastor of Macedonia Missionary Baptist Church in Eatonville.
There's a lot of room for improvements in the town that can work, but you have to negotiate. You can't stay the same. You have to grow.
We've heard from just as many, if not more, residents of the town of Eatonville who say, I want to have options.
I also spoke with Derek Bruce, counsel for the developer. He says their plan includes elements of the redevelopment plan that the town commissioned for itself in 2015.
What that study came up with was this property should be put to commercial, office, retail, and residential uses. That is exactly what we've proposed.
Bruce says the school board plans to give 6 acres to the town for a civic space. And he says the developer wants to work with residents to help plan a cultural and art space, recruit businesses, and reach out to historically Black colleges and universities.
There are ways that, that this community can preserve its identity, its heritage, without saying we don't want any progress or any development or any growth to happen here.
Now it's up to Eatonville's town council to weigh in on that conversation with their deciding vote on zoning entitlements on Tuesday. In Eatonville, Marlene Martinez, WESH 2 News.
We did reach out to Orange County Public Schools. A spokesperson says they do not comment on pending contracts.
And so next was national media. And so as you can see here, this was one of the first national things that we booked was Roland Martin Unfiltered, which got a really good amount of viewers online. What he also did right here was to take a snippet of the full show and create a separate link to discuss Eatonville, and it also got a lot of traction online. I think that the first one with the whole episode was about 36,000, and then Eatonville itself was about 16,000. So it did really well overall. I think about, close to 50,000 views so far, and that was about a month ago that I checked it again because I usually like to keep a check on it. So it's probably higher at this point, but that was one of the first national media outlets that did take the story on. And so then what we did was cater to a national audience. So by using the coverage that had already been done locally and by using the coverage from Roland Martin National, reached out to CBS Sunday Morning. They were extremely excited about this. This really is what their show is about, culture, heritage. And so they were ecstatic to be able to cover it. Right now, I think the email chain stands at about 300 emails, something like that. It's been quite a few, and it was definitely a long journey. And so they came to Eatonville a few times to just kind of get a lay of the land. get to know the people. They came to the Zora Fest and got some coverage from that and everything, and then they were able to put their whole story together and to air it. Martha Teichner, who's one of their top correspondents, was the one to come down and speak with NY. She spoke with Julian. She spoke with Ms. King. And so that was just a great thing to have someone who is so esteemed in the media world, Jane Pauley, her show to cover Eatonville as well. And so here's a short clip from that. Now, this particular clip, if you have watched it online, the actual story on Eatonville is about 9 minutes. This is a shorter clip that also includes an update from Martha.
In the decades after the Civil War, an estimated 100 all-black towns were settled across the United States. Most are long gone. Martha Teichner visits one of the first and last that's still fighting to hold on.
So many of the black towns have disappeared. What's different about Eatonville?
What we have the ability to do here is to leverage the authenticity of Eatonville as a cultural and historical space.
If we aren't careful, Eatonville is going to be extinct. This is me at Hungerford.
For 30 years, Vera King worked at the high school that was built on the site. Now it's gone too, along with 200 of those 300 acres.
This is economic justice that we're fighting for. Land is economic justice.
Since our story about Eatonville, Florida ran, there have been major developments. As you may recall watching the story, March 31st was the deadline for the developer to go through with the sale, purchasing the 100 acres left of the Hungerford property from the Orange County Public Schools. Well, on March 31st, after several days of absolute silence, the Orange County Public Schools issued a statement saying the deal was off, that the developer had walked away and terminated the agreement to buy the property. And this is part of the statement that they issued. In deference to the viewpoints expressed by so many in the community, the leadership of the OCPS, the Orange County Public Schools, has decided not to extend the contract or entertain other bids at this time. The decision presents us with a new opportunity to collaborate with the Eatonville community to preserve and celebrate the town's historic and cultural significance as the oldest incorporated black town in the United States. The school district goes on to say the district is also putting together the finishing touches on the updated Orange Technical College Eatonville campus, which will offer GED, adult education, and a welding program adjacent to Hungerford Elementary. Hungerford Elementary is the only school left in Eatonville. This is really significant because the will of the people made a difference, and possibly our story made a little bit of a difference. We haven't heard what exactly is going to happen next. The Southern Poverty Law Center filed suit against the Orange County Public Schools just before the March 31st deadline. The suit is still in place. The community organization that brought in the Southern Poverty Law Center and was fighting the sale has a wish that the land be transferred to a trust that would benefit the community and that would be governed by trustees who don't have any kind of political or profit-making interest in all of it. So far, we don't know what's going to happen, but the school district says that by law, it is unable to just give the land to the community in any particular way. So we'll see how they work all that out. But it's a significant development in the survival of Eatonville, and it shows that public engagement can make a big difference.
And Martha is absolutely right. It definitely can. Okay. So from there, actually, this past Monday on the 17th, a story, opinion piece was published in the New York Times by Nick Tuber, I think I pronounced it, Nick Tabor. And so that was published on this past Monday. So if you want to look at the article, please feel free, or I can maybe try to send you a link to it. But that is the article that was recently published. So in closing, it was important to educate the public on the history and importance of preserving the Eatonville community by honing in on Eatonville as one of the first Black incorporated towns. Next, we wanted to inform of the legacy of the hunger for property and the town being considered as a cultural and artistic oasis. And I thank you so much for having me here tonight. Thank you all. One more thing, I apologize. I took a picture so I wouldn't forget. In our critical mention, we're able to see how much audience engagement we've had. And so in typing in NY and code words like SPLC and the hunger for property, right now it has reached an audience of over 96 million people, as well as earned media of over 1.1 million.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? I'm a little soft-spoken, so just let me know at any point if you can't hear me. Get a little closer, okay. My name is Anjana Joshi. I'm an attorney with the Economic Justice Project. Thank you. And I'm here to talk to you a little bit today about how to challenge a development proposal as being inconsistent with the town's comprehensive plan and other planning documents. And this is something, as Kirsten mentioned, that we helped our client P.E.C. with in forming their objections at the second reading held on February 7th of this year. And I was here at that February 7th meeting, and I heard all of you speaking up. I heard Mayor Gardner, and you know, I just want to say at the outset, you all are the experts on this town. You are the first to know when a development proposal doesn't seem consistent with this town's historical nature and character. And so, you know, you're going to be the ones who are listening, and you know, you're the first to know when a proposal's scope and purpose threaten to create a town within a town, or threaten to swallow up the rest of the town. You know, if it will bring in newcomers on a large scale, or it will create housing that's not affordable or accessible to the residents who are currently here. And so I'm not really here to tell you anything that you don't know already, but you know, I'm hoping that after this, each of you will feel equipped to back up what you already know with points from your town's actual planning documents. And in that way, you know, you hopefully will have more of a basis to be heard before the town council if and when development proposals arise that you feel don't quite fit with Eatonville's scope and character. So first and foremost, Eatonville has a comprehensive plan. It sets forth goals, objectives, and policies for things like future land use, traffic, housing, sanitation, stormwater management, and even recreation and open space. And the comprehensive plan can be found on the town's website. And I saw that the town actually just recently revamped its website, and if you can't find it there, you can always ask the town clerk, and she can either email it to you or you can ask her, you know, make sure it's posted so that you all have access to it. So the comprehensive plan was adopted in 2018 and will remain in effect until 2038 unless it's amended. And all development proposals have to be consistent with the comprehensive plan's goals, objectives, and policies. A good indicator that a proposal is not consistent with the comprehensive plan is that it's asking to amend certain aspects of the comprehensive plan. And this was the case with the latest development that was voted down on February 7th. It sought to amend the comprehensive plan and the future land use map to allow for the kinds of development that the developer wanted to see and that maybe would have maximized revenue, but that were not in line with what the town of Eatonville had agreed to in the comprehensive plan. It hadn't envisioned for itself in the comprehensive plan. And so I wanted to give you some strategies for figuring out how to base your objections in this planning document. So first, review the basic goals of the comprehensive plan. You don't have to know like the ins and outs of the policies because it does get very specific. But I pulled out a few that I know are very important to this community, such as increasing affordable housing. That's one goal of the comprehensive plan. Preserving the community's historical character is another goal. And then keeping development consistent with future land use restraints in the comprehensive plan, or in other words, making sure that the town follows its own planning documents, which is a very important thing in and of itself. So that's the first thing. Review the basic goals of the comprehensive plan that are important to you. Second, review the agenda and the notes of past town council meetings, which should be posted on the clerk's website in advance of each public hearing. And if it's not, email, call the town clerk, because those should be accessible to everybody. The materials posted should include a council package that has details of the development proposal that's up for discussion and what the developer is asking the town council to approve. The package may also have a memo with notes from the town planner that you can look to as a start to a potential objection. So for example, in the latest development proposal that was voted down, it sought to increase residential use of the Hungerford property by 50%, while decreasing commercial use by 75%. And the town planner even noted in her memo that the, quote, the overall intent of the mixed use land use category was to provide a more non-residential mixed use with supporting residential. Changing this mix will change the intent of the land use category. So that right there is like a flag. You know that that is seeking an amendment to the comprehensive plan. It's not consistent already with the comprehensive plan by its nature because it's seeking to change it. And that is a good flag for you that there's maybe a basis for an objection there. Another example was that the proposal sought to remove the buffering requirement of 20 feet between buildings. So in other words, the developer wanted to build buildings closer together. And the town planner actually recommended denying this request because, you know, when looking into land use, there is a thing called density and intensity, and that can sort of increase things like, you know, odor, unsightliness, traffic, and things like that. So putting the buildings closer together, definitely increasing density and intensity. And that is, you know, something that the town had decided in the comprehensive plan that it wanted a minimum of 20 feet. Okay, so after you review the basic goals of the comprehensive plan, review the agenda and the proposals, show up at the public meetings and hearings and ask questions, which I know is something you all have been doing already. But keep the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan in mind and get as much information as early as you can. So, you know, again, some very quick examples from the latest development proposal that was voted down. The comprehensive plan sets forth minimum and maximum land use percentages that new development must meet. As I stated before, that proposal wanted to increase residential properties, decrease commercial properties, and again, would have increased density and intensity, which was incompatible with the comprehensive plan. Another example was that the comprehensive plan requires the town to increase affordable housing for people of certain incomes. And the latest development proposal was inconsistent with that goal because it would have increased residential housing that was unaffordable to many of the current residents of Eatonville and would have created a town within a town, as so many of you put it. And then a third example, the comprehensive plan requires future development to be, among other requirements, consistent with the community's historical character. And many of you voiced this concern very early on, but the proposal offered very little information about how the development would comply with the comprehensive plan and did not address the comments that you made publicly about your concerns with it. All it said in the actual proposal was that it would showcase the town's character and history through architecture, social art, and murals in a dedicated arts district, all while threatening to wipe out the character of the living, breathing town that is Eatonville. And so, a lot of this formed the basis of the comments you gave on February 7th and even at prior hearings, but there are actually, objectives and goals and policies set forth in your town's planning documents that you could, refer to when you're making these objections, and it provides just a further legal base for you to assert what you're already saying. And so the final thing, is what you've already been doing. Make your opinions heard. You can give public comment. You can submit that in writing if you, want to write out every single objection, bullet point, whatever, every goal, objective, policy that a development proposal is violating in the comprehensive plan. You could do that in writing in advance, or you can also do it orally at the public hearing. Hopefully, we're hoping through our lawsuit, as Melissa will get to in a little bit, that a court will find that, the land carries certain restrictions, and that will be helpful in limiting, the development proposals that are put forth for the land. But in any event, this is another tool that hopefully you all will find useful as you figure out what is best for your town. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Jamie Rush, and I am a senior staff attorney at the SPLC. Linda has given us kind of the background on our media strategy. Anjana has spoken about our kind of strategy centered on the public comments and the zoning. And I just wanted to talk really briefly about some of our research and efforts related to any sort of race-based claims. So as Kirsten mentioned, and as everyone knows, Eatonville is a historically Black community. So one of the things that came to mind as we were thinking of a kind of multifaceted approach was, are there any federal claims that we could bring that were based on race? Were any actions based specifically based on Eatonville being a historically Black community? So one of the things that we looked at was Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which says, let me also say that Title VI is one of those topics that you could spend all day talking about, or you could spend a very short amount of time talking about, and I'm going to spend a very short amount of time talking about Title VI. But essentially, Title VI is the prohibition against discriminating against individuals based on their race, color, or national origin. And essentially, anybody that gets federal funding, or in this case, OCPS as a public school board who gets federal funding, they are not allowed by law to discriminate on the basis of race. The somewhat, not tricky, but interesting part of the law is that you have to show that the entity that received federal assistance either intentionally or knowingly discriminated against someone based on their race. So what we did was on February 14th, we sent a letter to OCPS putting them on notice and giving them our analysis of what we, based on some of their past actions, what we would say is letting them know that these actions could be deemed as actions against Eatonville based on race. One of the first points in that letter was that we made was that the sale of the Hungerford property to private developers perpetuated a historic pattern of discrimination against the majority Black residents of Eatonville. So we laid out some facts and some timelines of this pattern and practice of OCPS and their kind of checkered history with segregation and things. And I won't get into too much of the facts because I know Melissa is going to dive in a little bit more deep into the factual basis of our lawsuit, but we laid out some of those things in that letter. Our second point was that OCPS has a history of profiting off the Hungerford property, which it would not have owned but for its participation in a system of race discrimination and segregation. So we, again, laid that out for OCPS so that there was no question of whether you knew or whether there was some analysis. We put all of that in that letter for them and detailed the history of the property, including I-4's construction and all of these facts that lend to this pattern of discrimination against the town. Our third point in that letter was that OCPS's decision to sell the Hungerford property for profit breached its legal duties as a trustee of public lands reserved expressly for educational purposes, and that departed from a regular decision-making procedures as set forth by state law. So essentially, we put in that letter notice that this is something that you're doing that's different than what you would usually do, which is a trigger to kind of think about when you're thinking of race-based claims specific to Title VI. Are you doing something out of the ordinary, and is it that you're doing it out of the ordinary because of this discrimination based on race, origin, that sort of thing. Our fourth point in that letter was that the decision to sell the land to a private developer was going to have an adverse, disparate impact on the majority Black town of Eatonville. So essentially, we listed some facts about Eatonville's demographic, the income, compared that to what the developer's plan was. So if you're not familiar, but I'm sure most of you are, some of the proposed rent for the residential the houses and things that they were going to build were going to be super expensive. It was going to be more than what the average or median Eatonville resident could afford. Essentially, that's just a catalyst for gentrification or that town within a town. If you're building things that the people that are already there can't afford, you're just going to create an influx of other people that are that can afford it and change the scope of the town. And it's something that we laid out very clearly in our letter with some data from the census and some other sources. Fifth, we proposed that there were less discriminatory alternatives to the sale that were available to OCPS. So this idea that, oh, well, we have to do this, or that there's nothing else that we can do with the land, we kind of gave them some other ideas, specifically, which has previously been mentioned, using the land to benefit the community and its children and not to benefit this developer. And then lastly, we called on OCPS to comply with its civil rights obligations and to analyze those actions. And it was our belief that if they did do an analysis similar to what we did, they would chart a new course that would be less discriminatory. So we sent that again on February 14th. We included that 10-page letter. We also included the written objections from the P.E.C. We included a lot of attachments, actually. There was also some research we had been doing and asking for documents to kind of create this letter to put OCPS on notice that it was in our research and belief that some of these actions were based on race. That letter is still kind of sitting there. It's there, we've delivered it. They should have read it by now. I think they've acknowledged receipt of it. So it's just another path or avenue that we've been thinking about in our advocacy that leans more to federal claims, which is a good transition to Melissa to talk a little bit about our factual background related to some state-based claims and investigation.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. I know it's late and it's a weekday and people have to work, so it's just great to see all the faces in the room. My name is Melissa Williams. I'm a senior staff attorney with the Economic Justice Project for the Southern Poverty Law Center. So as my colleagues have mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about the factual basis for the lawsuit that's currently pending in Florida State Court on behalf of the P.E.C. And it really starts back, I know many of you already know this history, but for the purpose of people who perhaps don't know the history, and I think it's just important to restate the history because it's powerful and this is the basis for the lawsuit. In 1897, the Robert Hungerford Normal and Industrial School was established by town leaders of Eatonville for the education of Eatonville's children. 160 acres were donated in the memory of Robert Hungerford by his parents. Eventually, those 160 acres grew to 300 acres and became the first school in Central Florida for the education of black children. The school operated as a private school modeled on Booker T. Washington's Tuskegee Normal and Industrial Institute in Tuskegee, Alabama. And a lot of the things that we've read and learned about since we started working on this case is that the school and the site of the school really formed the backbone of the community here in Eatonville. And it was more than just about education, it was about community and culture and pride of heritage. Fast forward to 1951, the school and the 300-acre property were acquired by the school board of Orange County from the trustees of the Hungerford Trust that owned the property. The school and the property were sold in exchange, or were purchased for $16,571, which was far less than some estimates of what the value of the land was worth, which some people estimate that in excess of $200,000. So it was sold for $16,000, valued at $200,000, so already being undercut. The sale of the school to the school board for Orange County was conditioned on it being used as a public school for the education of black children. That is actually in the deed, and we're calling that the deed restriction. So this deed restriction runs with the land, and this land can only be used for the education of black children, according to the deed restriction. The sale goes forward in spite of the objection of one of the heirs of the original donors of the property who contested the sale all the way up to the Florida Supreme Court. Ultimately, the Florida Supreme Court settled in favor of approving the sale of the land to OCPS. And then from there, basically we get into desegregation. So Brown v. Board of Education was decided in 1954, and then parents here in Eatonville brought a case that Ellis v. basically School Board of Orange County. Black parents brought a case on behalf of their children because OCPS was dragging its heels on desegregation. It was delay, it was excuses, it was incremental change. So the 1962 Ellis lawsuit was really what got desegregation started here in Eatonville and in this community. So in 1964, the Interstate 4 comes in, and it bisects a part of the Hungerford property. So OCPS decides to sell off the portion of the property that's west of I-4 because they can no longer use it as for educational purposes and as schools. And this was over the objection of the successor trustees of the Hungerford Trust. The school district also won permission from the courts to dissolve the deed restriction that we just talked about on that section of the property. The remaining property, where Hungerford High School continued to operate, retained the deed restriction that it must be used for the education of Black children. So over the years, OCPS continues to operate various versions of the Hungerford School on the site and selling off portions of the property. Fast forward to 2009, OCPS decides to close the last version of the Hungerford School, which was the Hungerford Preparatory High School. But the elementary school, as you guys know down the road, continued to operate and continues to operate to this day. In 2010, interestingly, OCPS finally achieves unitary status. So I mentioned the 1962 lawsuit to desegregate the schools here. It took them from then until 2010 to fully desegregate the school system here, the Orange County public school system here. So at that time, also in 2010, the town of Eatonville and the school board enter into a contract for the sale of the Hungerford property to the town. And this contract included a provision for the parties to work together to release the deed restriction requiring that the property be used for the education of Black children. In 2011, the town of Eatonville sued OCPS and the successor trustees of the Hungerford Trust to release the deed restriction that requires the remaining portions of the Hungerford property to be used for educational purposes. The town alleged that releasing the deed restriction would allow the town to purchase the land and use it for commercial development, which in turn would help to increase the town's tax base and better provide city services to the community. The school board, in turn, filed notice that it basically wouldn't object to the release of the deed restriction on the property. So this lawsuit goes on for a while. It's continued several times between 2011, when it was filed, and 2015. The suit just gets continued, delayed, et cetera. Finally, in 2015, the town voluntarily dismissed the lawsuit. In 2016, the trustees of the Hungerford Trust, or the successor trustees of the Hungerford Trust, the town of Eatonville, and Orange County Public Schools entered into a settlement agreement which was amended in 2016, in which the school district agreed to pay $1 million to the Robert Hungerford Chapel Trust for the release of the deed restriction, with payment required no later than January 16, 2017. It takes until 2022 for the deed release to finally be executed. So June 8, 2022, the deed release is executed, removing the restriction from the Hungerford property that provided it was only to be used for the education of Black children. And so this kind of brings us up to the factual basis that forms really the basis of our lawsuit, and I will turn it over to Kirsten.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks for listening to a bunch of lawyers on a Wednesday night. The last thing I'm going to do is just talk a little bit about what Melissa was just discussing, was the factual basis of the lawsuit that was filed in state court and on behalf of P.E.C. And what P.E.C. is asking the court to do is to issue declaratory judgment. Declaratory judgment means that there's uncertainty as to rights under the law, and P.E.C. wishes for the court to actually declare whether or not the 1951 deed restriction is still valid and continues to run with that land, and whether or not the deed release that Melissa was just discussing is valid and is enforceable. The basis of that objection, there's a number of legal issues that are detailed in the document, which is available online. It's on our website. There's actually a page about the lawsuit at splcenter.org, where you can read the complaint, you can read more about the lawsuit. But basically, it's questioning as to whether or not there was legal authority to actually release the restriction. It questions the way in which the agreement was made among the parties to release this restriction. And there's a second claim in there, which is related to the school board's obligations under state law as it relates to the disposal of surplus property. So there's a state statute that requires school districts to diligently dispose of school property only after it's determined to be unnecessary for educational purposes, and it has to be in the best interest of the public. And so our lawsuit contends that the school board has failed to comply with its obligations under state law, and that it should be prevented from selling the land until it meets those requirements. And one of the claims that we make in the lawsuit specifically is that the best interest of the public typically is a fact-intensive analysis under state law, and that that inquiry here needs to take into account the history of this land, the importance of this property to this community, and it needs to really consider specifically the best interests of the children in the town of Eatonville. So those are basically the basics of the lawsuit. We're at the very beginning stages, and the reason we are continuing with the lawsuit, even though the developer canceled the sale, is that the lawsuit is about whether or not Orange County Public Schools can continue to, sell the land for any purpose to any buyer for any reason, or if there continues to be a restriction on how that land is used, and to make sure that it's consistent with the original charitable intent of this land and how it came into the hands of the school board. So that is what we are doing and continue to do. And I really thank you all for your time and your attention tonight. Where's, Ms. Nathiri, if you could come up here to offer some additional remarks.
So this is the opportunity for you to ask questions. The attorneys are here, and I hope that what you have heard really establishes that this is a reasonable, well thought out lawsuit. The attorneys practice in the state of Florida, and they would not file a frivolous lawsuit. All right? In other words, they would not do that because their licenses would be in jeopardy. So this is a lawsuit that has weight, has standing, and this is an opportunity for you to ask questions before we close. The microphones are, yes, the microphones are there, please. Please be sure to state your name because we are doing this for the record.
Hi, my name is LaWanda Thompson, and I am speaking as a concerned citizen that lives next to Eatonville. We are from Hannibal Square. I want to commend you all for the lawsuit that you're setting forth. Mama NY, thank you so much for protecting the historic Black community of Eatonville that is so important to all Black citizens in America, because this is where our governance began as a people. I appreciate that. My question is that when I hear the dates, because I'm very aware of the history of OCPS and the discrimination that also has hurt the community of Hannibal Square, as we are missing our elementary, that has been gone for many years and disrupted our community and led to gentrification. But in particularly, this thing that has happened to Eatonville happened under a time when the superintendent was of color. And I don't think that enough is being said about that, on the importance of the people that lead our communities having a Sankofa experience that makes sure that they understand how to fight appropriately for people that look like them. And understand that although they may have a different ideology because of income and this, that, and the other, that they have to make sure that they carry an ideology that protects all the people. So on that note, is it possible that because these things were set in motion by certain individuals in power, that civil lawsuits can arise? Because I feel like there was some intentional hurt that was caused to this community, and it should be looked at. And as brothers and sisters, we do have to get to the point where we hold not only those that don't look like us accountable, but those that look like us accountable for falling prey to the mental trappings of America and not protecting their brother and sister. Thank you.
I'll just add that our team is from the Economic Justice Practice Group, but we also have a Children's Rights Practice Group that's working on ensuring that public education is accessible to all children. So to the extent anyone wants to talk further about other issues in our community, please feel free to come talk to me afterwards.
My name is Joyce, and my ancestry goes back to the very beginning of Eatonville. I profoundly thank you. Thank you for the term living artifact. It's beautiful. Kirsten, thank you for your profound legal points. They were like daggers. Just thank you guys, because it was getting to the point where all we had to fight with was our bodies. Nobody was coming to save us. And my friends from California were like, you just gotta put your bodies out there. Like, really? Okay, like we'll do it, but hopefully we won't get to that. Thank you guys for caring. Just thank you, that's all, just thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Ross, and I'm one of the graduate students researching the Robert Hungerford School. So you mentioned that the disposal of land by OCPS is a fact-based process. I assume that also means it's a time-intensive process. What sort of time frame does that look like for the fact-finding on both sides? And is that advantageous or disadvantageous by having the county, like, does stretching that process out for them make them more inclined or less inclined to drag the process out?
I'll answer that question the best way I know how, which is just to take a step back and talk about what it means for a school board to own land. Mm-hmm. And a school board doesn't own land like a private landowner does. It is not its land to do with what it wants. It owns that land for a specific purpose. It holds it for the public trust. It holds it for the education of children in the community. And so the purpose behind a statute like the one that Florida has is really rooted in this idea that if a school board is going to dispose of our property because we own it as people who live in these communities, that they can only do so if it decides that it's no longer it's no longer necessary for educational purposes. There has to be a recommendation in a plant survey, which is something that they routinely do. There has to be a resolution at a school board meeting. And the best interest analysis really is about protecting the community and ensuring that those decisions that are made by elected officials who answer to us is made within the best interests. And so I would say that a process like that is codified in our laws, it is the law of the land, it's in the state statute, that it is not burdensome for school boards to do that, and in fact is necessary as part of their obligation as custodians and stewards of land that belongs to us.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, please. I'm sorry. All right, thank you. Good evening. My name is Jeanette Sperling. My address is 212 South Calhoun, which is right across the street. I am so thankful to you. God bless each and every one of you for your hard work. And please continue. Eatonville need you. I was born and raised right here in Eatonville. My father ran a place of business across Kennedy now. No, is it? Yes. It was called Jeff's Blue Lantern, I think, in Wino. And we had the best hamburgers in the world. I just had to say that. But I was here when Eatonville was a dirt road. One dirt road. You had to pull over in the woods to let a car pass. I've seen it. I'm 77. God's will, I'll be 78 July this year. I've been here. I've seen Eatonville come from nothing to where it is now. Things are okay to certain degrees. But again, thank you. Keep fighting for us. If you need me, 212 South Calhoun, Eatonville. Thank you. And thanks to Cynthia Pittman. She's always calling me, and I'm so glad I made up my mind to come to this meeting. I've learned quite a bit. Old people say you never get too old to learn. God bless you, and thank you again.
Good afternoon. I was waiting for the gentleman to come because he started up earlier. My name is Martha Bryant Hall, and I would like to thank you all. I have been a member of SPLC since 1986. I would like to thank you all very much for what you are doing. Now, I can go back a little further than Jeanette because my uncle went to the private school. I taught at Wymore, which was Hungerford. Mr. Ote asked me when I finished high school and business school, would I come and sub? So I subbed at Hungerford. I was here with the preparatory school. I remember when the parents sent letters asking and requesting Orange County School Board not to close the school because the students were learning so much. And by this being an institution for children and for learning, every great community would have a school, high school, elementary, or middle school. We go right across the street in Maitland. Maitland has, I think it's 2 elementary schools and 1 middle school. We go to Winter Park, many elementary schools, junior high, middle school, and a high school. So if Eatonville is going to be successful, which in the 1800s, that the black men came in to incorporate this city for the welfare of a black community. And it is the first incorporated city. You can go to Washington, D.C., and you will see it in the museum. It is time that we as a group of people stand together, work together, and think about our children. And in thinking about our children, we got to go in our homes and correct the homes. But by you all coming to Eatonville, you're making a difference. Hopefully that the community will change. Hopefully that the community will have the love that they will raise their children to be leaders. Leaders. I had only 3 children to attend Hungerford Elementary. Then any of them attend Hungerford. But I went 1 year at Hungerford. And I do believe that, I was hoping that when they decided that they were going to demolish the school, that they would leave at least the gym and the chapel. But they didn't even leave that. And that would have been one aspect that the city could grow with education. And it's shameful that the Orange County School Board did not see that in this community, that it was worthwhile to have a school higher than elementary. We could have had a vocational school here. I worked at Seminole Community College for 13 years in the vocational program. So why couldn't a vocational school come into this town? I pray that the right choices will be made. We have a new superintendent now, and I hope that she will look at this to say, hey, we made a mistake, and we need to do the right thing. So I will say the peace of the Lord be with you all, and thank you for coming.
Hello, my name is Linda Greathouse, and I live at 531 Catherine, Eatonville, Florida. I'm very upset when I hear the data of how long we have been fighting and nobody answered. I appreciate you all for answering the call. This town needs progress, but we need progress that's going to benefit all of us and not some of us. We need progress to build from years down the road, not just progress. It's going to be a temporary fix for a developer to get some money and leave. I seen when they tore down this school, I got pictures on my phone. Everybody was taking pictures when they tore down the school. But the sad part about when they tore down the school, Orange County did not respect the community or the school enough to save the history. Everything that was at the school was still at the school when they tore it down. They threw it in the trash and the garbage, the yearbooks, the awards. They threw it all in the garbage. That let them know that they thought nothing about the history of this town and the people of this town. Because the people of this town has become doctors, lawyers, business owners, community developers. All over they have history. And they threw our history in the garbage. That's what they thought about us. They thought we was garbage, but they didn't know garbage, trash makes buildings. Buildings put people in them. People become somebody, and somebody becomes all about us. We are somebody in this town. We are not their trash. We are not their garbage. We're not their walk around. We're not their throw off on. We are somebody in this community, and we stand for something in this community. There's greatness in every single solitary person in this community. I don't care what background they're in. There's still greatness can be found in anybody. So I appreciate you all, because if we throw away our history again, we will never be able to retain it back. All those communities that were black, their history is gone. They cannot get it back. And if we lose history, we lose a part of us. And we are the ones that make history.
We're coming very close to the end of the time, but there is a call for action. There is a call for action. There is something that each of you can do, and this is going to be, this session is going to be placed on the posted on social media tomorrow morning. We had some people who were on the Zoom, but because of the technology here, in order for us to really do the job that we needed to do here, we had to close that down. I do want to acknowledge that there are two more elected officials who have joined us during this time, Councilwoman Wanda Randolph and Councilman Theo Washington. Again, I want to acknowledge that one of our past presidents, Johnny Rivers, has joined us as well. There are prepaid postage postcards. It is very important. It is very important that people in Eatonville, as well as in Orange County, and there are different cards for people in Orange County, but the people in Eatonville, it's very important that we send in what we are thinking. These postcards are available at Town Hall. They're available here. Please take the time, take them home with you and take the time to send them in. Again, they are prepaid postage. Since we're reminiscing, yes, I remember Jeanette Cunningham and those hamburgers, and I remember walking from where my mother's property is now, and I'm looking right at Nathaniel Vereen Jr. because we used to stand on the corner to catch the bus to go to Webster Elementary School in Winter Park, right? And so yes, you know, I have to smile because our people have only been here since the early 1900s. Mrs. King's grandmother was born in Eatonville, right? And for the people who are newcomers, and of course, Ms. Crittenden is a part of the founding family, Joe Clark's family. In other words, it's very important. It's very important that people actually know the history. And you don't have people who have just this superficial knowledge who say things, well, the courts agreed to it, so it must be right. No, please. Unfortunately, we're living in a time when if you actually look like us and you go to the wrong house, you can be shot. So it's, you know, it's, as the younger people say, it's for real, all right? So let me assure you that I think that our board of directors is going to stay the course. As I said, we have to be prepared for the fact that it may take several years to bring this situation to a successful conclusion. But I am confident that Orange County Public Schools is going to see the wisdom of transferring that land back to a community trust. And why are they going to see that wisdom? It's because we call it the carrot and the cudgel. The cudgel is a lawsuit. The lawsuit is going to require them to respond. That's the way the law is. That's the way the law is. And I'm hoping that those of you who have attended this meeting, that you will let other people in Eatonville know that what is possible, what is actually in place now, and that we must stand, and that we must stand for generations, not 10 years, not 20 years. Best practice in community planning is 100 years. That's what the professionals will tell you. So when people start talking about 10 years and 20 years and what's going to happen, no, excuse me, no. We want our grandchildren's grandchildren to have protection here. That's what we're looking for. So another call for action, 1887 plus, if you go first, if you go to, there is a petition that is circulating. You can review it and sign it. And the third call for action is, and this is the real deal, the Association to Preserve the Eatonville Community is standing at the breach the Association to Preserve the Eatonville Community needs your individual support. Yes, we write grants. Yes, we look for corporate sponsorships. Yes, we do this, and yes, we do that. But we actually have a challenge. We have been told that we need to acquire 1,000 commitments from people, grassroots people, $2, $5, $10 a month for 12 months, so that we can be eligible for larger matching funds. So as I told the college students when I talked to Tuskegee, a coffee a month, all right? You buy a coffee 3 times a week, 4 times a week, you spend $10, $15, a coffee a month for Preserve Eatonville Community, all right? Those are the 3 calls for actions. Fill out the postcard and send it in. Review the petition, Eatonville First, and think about what it means to establish an organization that can stand in the breach. Because everything that you have heard here, that's what we do. We have the utmost confidence that we speak for Jeanette Sperling, that we speak for Linda Greathouse, that we speak for all the people of Eatonville, because we do want progress, the best kind of progress.
May I speak? I'd like to bring to memory those bonded bodies that gathered and made a covenant. An eternal covenant has been made. That's what we have to uphold. The eternal covenant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's what we have to stand on. That's what that covenant meant. Make sure that we take a look at the mirror that those founding fathers had in mind. When you mention the centuries, the 2.5 centuries that's gone on, not to mention the elements of others. But the fact is that there's a holy covenant being overlooked here. Hopefully not. God bless you, and thank you for your energies. Peace with you.
It's only right. Okay, Julian Johnson, 1887 first. First and foremost, I want to thank you all for coming out tonight to the Southern Poverty Law team. I know I'm a bit impatient, so y'all bear with me throughout this whole process. I rung my head a lot, like, what's going on? I didn't know if y'all was working or what was going on. So, but thank you for being in the trenches with us for sure, and thank you to the residents of Eatonville. We really want to thank you all for coming out and speaking your concerns and voicing your opinion on this entire subject. Like that was major. And to Councilman Washington, Mayor Gardner, Councilwoman Randolph, thank you for coming. The sister said something right. We need to hold people accountable who are our leaders. There are other elected officials not here tonight. I invited them. They're not here. We already know who they are, so hold them accountable. I'm gonna keep inviting them. Saturday, we have a community celebration. We wanna celebrate the people of Eatonville. So we encourage everybody to come out, bring your friends, family, the kids. HaHa just sponsored, the kids' bouncing house. So we'll have that for the kids, but Esteemed Learning, we'll be doing some educational stuff with them. So they'll be learning STEM activities as well. Councilman Washington will be grilling with us. So he's gonna be on the grill. We're gonna have a good time. So thank y'all for coming out, and let's continue to hold people accountable. And one last question, what do you all need from us as residents as we go forward with this lawsuit? What do you need us to continue to do on the ground and the grassroots?
Thanks so much, Julian. Well, I would just say that the same kind of passion and energy and community comment and commitment that was shown by this community in opposing the zoning changes before the town council needs to be redirected to the school board. They now have this land that they hold, and the only way that I think we can ultimately be successful is if the elected officials hear from the people in this community about what they want them to do with this land. I think continuing to speak out and speak up publicly and to the school board is one way. And also, Linda, our media strategist extraordinaire, is always looking for folks who want to be connected to tell their story. And there's so many wonderful stories about the history of this town and your histories with this town. So we would love to collect names and contact information as we continue to get more press interest in telling this story and uplifting this wonderful community that I've been just so grateful to be a part of these last few months. Thank you.
All right. Thank y'all. And one last thanks. The Land Bank Committee is here. Tamika and Tiffany Simmons, they've been a tremendous help throughout this entire process. And also Kristen, my now fiance. So I did get engaged like about a week and a half ago. Thank y'all for being in the trenches with me. You know, I'm a bit rough around the edges, but you know, this system made me that way. You feel me? When we got out outside of college, it made us this way. Like, it was hard. So that's just passion, and that stuff is on the inside. Like, all of it is love, though. So I thank y'all so much for, you know, doing this with us and standing in the trenches with us. And Ms. Johnson here, you know, she over here typing. She probably got like a whole essay written already, but she's like our go-to person for information. So everybody who's played a role in this fight, Dr. French as well, and the students at UCF, thank y'all. We appreciate it. And, I can't forget Ruthie Critton. You know what I'm saying? She was in the trenches with us too. So thank everybody who has been fighting. And I know Dr. NY likes to get out on time, so I'm gonna stop right now. All right, y'all.
Good afternoon to everybody here. I just want to say thank you all for being here to help us out here in Eatonville. And my thoughts that I have on my mind and in my heart, which I met the lady in the library. She told me to come down here to Denton Johnson, which I did. And I like to see here in Eatonville, I live across from the Hefty Eatonville place, where they tore down. I'm across from 275 College Avenue. I used to go there every Monday, do blood pressure. We did games, we did exercise over there. Stuff like that, I miss stuff like that. Then we had elderly and people disabled that came out there. We did walks in the morning. We don't do that no more. Ain't nobody there to go with us to go do that no more now. And it's sad. And by the place being gone, when I open the door in the morning, I don't see nothing but just the grass. And when you see the children, they're running in the street. They ain't got no playground to go to, nowhere to sit at, because it's all gated in. What else are we supposed to do?
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks again for coming. Good night. Please be sure to take the cards with you.